The formula has changed little in thousands of years. It still starts with a fiery, hot orange glow, the combination of sand, soda, and lime. Add extreme heat and the breath of man. And this is the result.
If nobody purposely breaks that piece, or, no misfortune of that nature befalls it, that glass is going to look pretty much the same 1,000 years from now.
Legend says that glassblowing began with ancient mariners and was handed down through the ages to those brave enough or foolish enough to withstand the sparks, the heat, and the disappointment of the craft. Today, the tradition continues. James Michael Kale, artisan and master glassblower, taking an ancient art form and keeping it alive, turning fire into ice.
This program is made possible by your membership support. Thank you.
Jim Kahle is a glass artist. He is best known for creating large, open vessels featuring vibrant colors and unique shapes. His works have been exhibited in solo shows in over 100 galleries in the United States and around the world. Jim's works have evolved through trial and error, from traditional, smaller, less intricate designs to what are now complex creations that draw attention at major exhibitions. His finest achievement has been a show that utilized the unique setting of a botanical garden. Jim's oversized, colored vessels are brilliantly showcased by sunlight and water, bringing to life inanimate glass. Jim has chosen a path of extreme resistance, weathering the heat and sometimes the heartbreak of forging his fragile pieces from ovens that reach over 2,000 degrees. Every piece is different. Every piece offers a new challenge.
What intrigues me about glass is just about everything about it. The fact that it's dynamic, the fact that it is molten and changeable and fluid, and the fact that you can make anything you can imagine out of glass is, that's intriguing.
Jim Kahle's personal journey to glassblowing began when he was a child. He was born in Toledo, a city once known for glass manufacturing and a place where what's known as the studio glass movement was born in the 1960s. Dominic Labino was credited as the father of that movement. He is well known for the development of a small, affordable furnace used to melt glass. His innovation revolutionized glassblowing, making it possible for artists to establish small studio workshops. Labino was also an artist in his own right and was recognized worldwide for his creations. But it was a simple glass chalice he created for a Catholic church in Toledo that sparked the interest of a 13-year-old boy.
And I went out and I was looking at it, and I just thought it was the neatest thing I'd ever seen. And was very fortunate. At the time, what I thought was an old man, he was most likely younger then than I am now, came up behind me and said, "Son, do you like that?" And I said, "Yeah, I think that's the neatest thing I've ever seen." And he said, "Well, you go tell your mom and dad you need to come out to my house for a day." And of course, that was Dominic Labino, and I got a chance to go out and watch him blow glass for not a whole day, about a half a day. And from that time on, every time I had a chance to, I'd look at a piece of glass and think, now, how did they make that?
While a lifelong fascination with glass was kindled, Jim initially experimented with more traditional careers. He had numerous jobs and earned an associate's degree in public service, where he counseled young people. He also fixed furniture and worked in an ice cream store. But Jim was a restless spirit, a man in search of something, and it wasn't until his mid-30s that he finally realized what he wanted to do. He remembered the glass, his fascination. And after taking one class in glassblowing, Jim knew he had found his true calling.
I gathered that first gather of glass, and I knew that I was going to be doing this the rest of my life. And it's the first time I'd ever had that feeling about anything. And you know what? 15 years later, it hasn't changed.
So, Jim built his studio in Rockford, Ohio, where small-town life suits him. He can fish in the local rivers and continue to create in his storefront studio. The glassblowing technique that Jim uses has changed little. It starts with the intense heat of the furnace. He dips a blowpipe into the flame and pulls out a small amount of clear molten glass called a gather. And here is where it all begins. What Jim calls the dance.
What I'm talking about is all of the choreography that's involved in making that piece. And it has a flow and an ebb. And unlike music that you know what's going to happen next, with this you don't necessarily know. And part of the fun is that it's really jazz and that it's not scripted. And that you kind of have to go with what's going on. And you have to be interactive with those around you if you're working in a team, with the elements that you're working with.
Yeah. That's a little piece of that.
Jim's work is truly a dance, and the molten glass his partner. His focus is such that they become one, and he listens for the messages sent to him.
The glass always has something to tell you. You just listen to it, and you listen with your eyes and your ears and your fingers and all of you, and you try to become more in sync with that little glob of glowing mass on the end of the pipe, so that you know what it's feeling without having to really think about it. So you know when it's too cold, you know when it's too hot, you know when it's too thin, or when it needs to be blown out a little further. You know when the color needs to be stretched to get what you want, or you know sometimes that you may be going a little too far, or maybe you need to not go this far. Maybe there's something else that needs to be explored there.
The piece must be constantly reheated to keep it workable, with color and designs added in between the new gathers of glass. Jim uses wet newspapers to help shape the glass, allowing him to readily feel what the glass is telling him. The glass is constantly changing, and he must adapt.
The piece that you're working on this minute is not exactly the same piece you're working on 35 seconds from now. It's because it's dynamic and it changes and it goes through different phases, you know. If you're paying attention, you'll notice that.
As Jim works, The glass is soft and pliable with a changing shape and texture. It's perhaps easy to forget that this glowing creation at the end of a pipe is glass. And the first lesson of glass is something each of us learned as a child. Glass shatters.
Oh, that lost a big time. Yeah, I see it. Take a jump, guys. Yeah, she split all the way down.
Hours can be spent working on a piece only to lose it in the end. For those pieces that never reach completion, Jim allows himself only a few moments before moving on.
For 30 seconds, after that happens, you're allowed to cuss and swear and use all the bad words and jump up and down, throw things as long as you don't do any permanent damage to anybody and you know, that kind of thing. You can have your little temper tantrum. But you get 30 seconds. And at the end of the 30 seconds, it's over. It's done. You don't think about it anymore. You just have to divorce yourself from what happened. Forget about what happened and concentrate back on the here and now. If you don't let it go, it's going to follow, and it's going to be right front and center than the next piece. And you're much more likely to lose the next piece if you didn't let it go after the first one you lost.
Every time a piece is lost, there is the hope, the optimism that the next piece will reach completion. And even if it does, glass promises to be a temperamental dance partner, always challenging even the most experienced artisans.
The time you think you really have it mastered, it's going to turn around and bite you. You know, it'll do something just to make you aware that you're really not the master.
At least in Jim's eyes, the craft will never be mastered. Yet he feels a great deal of satisfaction creating something that can be held and touched and has the potential to last forever.
There is an honesty and a fulfillment and a richness in being able to physically see what's going on and to, you know, at the end of the day turn around and say, I made that. And here it is. It's concrete. It's not something on a disc. It's not something on paper. It's not something that is going to disappear in bad weather or whatever, you know. If nobody purposely breaks that piece or, you know, no misfortune of that nature befalls it, that glass is going to look pretty much the same 1,000 years from now.
Fulfillment and success are part of making a living as an artist. Jim is doing just that. However, he hopes his creations touch something inside of those who experience it.
Successful art is something that evokes an emotional response. Now, you notice I didn't say it was something that pleased you or something that you were going to be happy seeing. I don't think all art is happy. I don't think it should be. Art is something that evokes an emotional response. So once again, if you see a piece of mine and you think it's great and you tell me, that was successful. If you see a piece of mine and you think it was ugly and you tell me, or tell your friend next to you, that was successful because it got a response. If you can come through our gallery and look and have absolutely no reaction, then we were unsuccessful as artists because we didn't get a response. So the piece of glass that I might think of as the most beautiful piece of glass I've ever made, generally people don't like them very much. The pieces that I think are okay or maybe not as great, a lot of times you'll find somebody who really sees something in that or it really touches them.
The nature of glassblowing is such that every single piece is different. It's a tremendous motivator for Jim and one that leaves him exhausted but fulfilled.
I guess for me, the motivation is to have those good days, the ones you don't remember. Because there is no more serenity that I have ever been able to find than the feeling of finishing one of those days. Totally exhausted, sweaty, stinky, can't hardly move anymore, and it's okay.
As a glassblower working in his studio, the laws of science and nature might be the farthest things from Jim Kale's mind. Yet he was told years ago by an art instructor that it was physically impossible to combine metal and glass in a single piece. Since both elements heat and cool at different temperatures, the result is broken glass. But Jim thought otherwise. With a great deal of persistence, he produced the seemingly impossible, metal totally immersed in glass. His process and technique remain a secret, a source of great pride, and an act of defiance.
Persistence, yeah. 2.5 years, 2,500 plus broken pieces before the first one worked. If that's persistence, then I have it. And I went ahead and did it, and it didn't work. But it set off that little part of me that says, you know what? Don't tell me I can't do this. You know, there's got to be a way. Did I know what the way was? No. Did I have any reasonable scientific evidence that there should have to be a way? No. Did it matter? No. So the shift goes from just the glass to the glass and the way of making it.
While Jim says he will never master glassblowing, his knowledge of the art is a precious gift, one that becomes more valuable when he's able to share it with others.
If you learn something that is of value and you go to your grave never having passed that on, does what you learned still have any value? If it hasn't been shared and it hasn't prospered, then what you learned may have had value for you in your time, but there is no more value to it if it hasn't been passed on. So I guess, you know, maybe it's just an egotistical thing. Maybe I've just worked too hard and too long to let it go. But for me, at this point in my career, it's more valuable. There is a better use of myself and knowledge and whatever that I may have. The better use is to disseminate that and to give other people an opportunity, not only to learn that, but to build off of it and to learn new things, you know, from there.
It's not unusual for an experienced artist to work with young apprentices, but Jim's approach is unique. Most apprentices have to pay for the privilege to work in a studio like this. Not here. Making it easier for young people to explore the craft, work hard, and perhaps learn a few of life's lessons.
The hope is that I'll have 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 kids that came up behind me that we gave an opportunity to, and they got to go out and become rich and famous glassblowers or great teachers, or more importantly, good people, you know. And that's really what we're trying to do. The rest of it's just a ruse, you know. It's really all about trying to make good people. And glass happens to be a wonderful carrot that you can wave out in front of somebody as a motivating factor.
Very good. All right, guys, good job today. Excellent. Thank you very much. Good job.
As a child, Aaron McMillan remembers watching a glassblower at an amusement park. While others were occupied with roller coasters, Aaron was fascinated with glass. She found Jim in rural Ohio and followed her calling.
Jim has done a lot for me. Without Jim having the studio and being kind enough to let me in and be able to teach me what he knows, I don't know where I'd be right now. I like the way it moves. I like the color of it. I love being able to wake up in the morning and have an idea of how to make something, and then when you go to bed that night, you know it's there, and you know that, you know, when you lay your head down to sleep, that you've created something that wasn't created when you'd woken up that morning. I like to be able to think of something in my head and then be able to produce it where I can actually see it later.
Among the other apprentices working with Jim is Dwayne Darlin. A high school art teacher suggested he check out glassblowing. That led Dwayne to Jim's studio.
I didn't know anything about glassblowing at all. Hadn't even really seen much glass, and just my art teacher told me a little bit about it, and after I went and saw it, just pretty neat stuff, and stuck with it.
Dwayne has the potential to be so much better glassblower than I have ever dreamed about being. He has that kind of potential. We got a couple kids in our program that have that kind of potential. And, you know, at first you kind of look at that and you say, well, hold it. You know, what's going on here? And then you take a little time and you think about it and you realize that nothing could be better. You know, I hope that every one of our kids that comes through our program is more successful than I've been. You know, what more could you want?
The urge to teach, to mentor, to pass along the flame of glassblowing is so strong and personal to Jim, it extends beyond his apprentices. Started by Jim in 1997, the Hot Glass Experience gives high school students from rural Ohio a chance to be exposed to glassblowing, many for the first time.
I learned that it is a dangerous job, and I learned that it takes a lot of time and you need patience to do it. But I still think that it's a very neat experience, and I really liked being involved in the work rather than just watching or looking at it. I enjoyed going in and actually trying it and knowing what it's like before anything else.
I think that if you don't give back, if you don't nurture, then A, you have no right to take, okay, and that means things like people paying for your glass. And if you don't do that, then what's the future? You know, is the future constantly regaining the same knowledge over and over again? Or is a better future one where you can take the knowledge that's already been gained and build on it? I think the latter is better.
I just know that I'm really, really grateful that he has opened the doors to the studio to all of us so that we can all come in and learn what he loves. I mean, I think that's one of the main motivators is for him, is that he gets so much enjoyment out of that, and it would just be, you know, almost a loss to hold that all to himself and to not teach other people, you know, the joy of glassblowing when he has the opportunity.
The love of glass and an appreciation of each other's talents motivates Jim and his apprentices to continually explore new directions. The works in the botanical garden were a collaborative effort, the melding of art and nature.
I think that it provided a wonderfully successful opportunity to take a very small group of people and give them a project of such a scope that they'd never even anticipated before. And over the course of 6 months, be able to take that same group and turn around and say, look what you did. And you did it well. So I think that, you know, that was a big part of the success in that. If you look at some of the glass that we used, the forms of it, and to a certain degree some of the patterning and the coloration was very organic, very much a natural line. in a natural coloration, as opposed to something that was very rigid. And I think that they work very well with each other. Of course, water, you can't have plants without water. You can't have fountains without water. I suppose you could. It wouldn't be much fun. So, the interplay between those, to me, was just a given. I mean, it was obvious. And then when you add then the variable light, because of the way the greenhouses are oriented, the light changes, it did nothing but enhance it. And if you can create, what we went for was to create an experience that involved all of your senses. Remember, we talk about success being evoking an emotional response. The more senses we can have involved, the more likely we are to be able to evoke that emotional response. You might not get the emotional response from seeing the glass, but that mist on your face might trigger a whole set of emotions, or the smell of the flower, or the touch of it. So it gave us an enhanced ability to have a successful show.
Jim's art is one of constant exploration. As the years pass, his works are more elaborate, and his goals have moved beyond the glass.
My work has evolved on that level, from being smaller and less intricate to becoming much more intricate and larger scale and more mixed media stuff, the steel and the stone and the wood and like that. But my real work has changed from learning how to become a good glassblower into trying to figure out how to provide that opportunity for more people. So in that regard, the focus of my personal work has changed somewhat, and it's more about providing the opportunities for those that are coming up than it is about, me going off in some new direction. I'll go off in some new direction when I get there.
The talents of Jim Kahle have their genesis in a flame that has long been forgotten. Through the resiliency of glass, his works will last virtually forever. They sit quietly, begging to be touched. We can touch, but never the way the artist does. Jim's vision and his glass stir emotions. His generous spirit changes lives. And it all starts with a fiery, molten ball of glass, turning fire into ice.